I'm going to talk about reimagining MLS data in the context of the semantic web. And so let's get started with that. Let's see if I can manage this. Okay, you all can see who I am. We're good there, probably no problem. Okay, all right. Important thing happened in 1997. Interesting enough, little footnote, this particular document that was put together wasn't published publicly until 2012. 2012 was the original published date. You can actually go online and buy the document. But the actual article and system itself was actually written back in 1997. The document was put together, requested by Lieutenant General Irvin J. Roque. And what he did was he solicited two gentlemen to get together to put together an ontology on information and how and what the consequences were in our world. Interesting about this particular thing is that these two gentlemen, David Alberts and Daniel Platt, got together a bunch of other experts, and they wrote a bunch of articles, I think probably 35 altogether, put them in one particular document and released them. It was quite significant because what they were talking about was looking forward and looking at how information was going to change the course of the whole world. This was a big deal. And we're going to look at some of the reasons why. Some of the reasons why were posted here, some of the topics there. The thing we're going to focus on here is the reality check. What's the reality check on information? And so the focus here was information and communications, business and consumers, services, and then government and military. That was the primary focus of the work they put together. So when these guys got together, they talked about and they were saying some really important things about what was going to happen with technology. Where was it going? How was it going to affect us? A lot of things came up. The speed of technology. What was going to happen? How are we going to get it delivered? How are we going to package it? Different types of messages were going to occur. There were good things about technology. There were bad things about technology. This was a scary, big picture, but very exciting. Okay, and so what we wanted to take a peek at was in all of that stuff that was happening. Okay, and us going back and reimagining, revisioning how MLS data can be used. We went back in time. Going back in time, we took a peek at the information and said, what had really happened at key points, and where did perhaps we lose our way in terms of brokers and agents, what happened to us? Okay. So one of the things that goes along with all this thing that's critical to that thinking was that there's good information and there's bad information. There's good information and there's bad information. Turns out that there's actually, one of the authors articulated that there's actually a number of different types of bad information. Okay, and we're going to have a little play game with that, but I want to go ahead and kind of stick in your mind right now one of the famous quotes from X-Files, and you all know what it is from Mulder about information. Trust no one, right? Trust no one. Okay. All right. One of the things that, in getting back to our original context, or the context on this particular thing, is information and its reality check. And one of the interesting things that I found was very clever about this, in terms of how the author was writing about it, is he went through and articulated these bad things that could happen to us, and then wrote real-world things that actually happened. So that we could get a real example of what kind of things happened in the real world. So all of you remember this thing that happened with the event in Atlanta, right? The bombing, with the bombing there. So this is an obvious case of, or a case of obvious but wrong. Okay? So information can be obvious, but it can also be wrong. Here's another case here. We have information is censored for your own good. Okay? Americans made sure to buy cars with airbags, preferably on both driver's side and passenger side. They learned that the airbags can kill small children. The experts knew of the danger and kept it quiet because they thought it would create public panic and lead people to use their airbags, thus dying in greater numbers. Meanwhile, millions of Americans are thinking of dozens of times they have left their kids up front. As a rule, when one piece of good information goes unknown, it means another piece of information will turn bad. Okay? So you can think about that now. This is a long time ago. This was back in 1997. Think about all the claims we have today about fake news, right? Fake news, misinformation, all those things. We knew about this a long time ago, right? And it wasn't, and the reason why this happened was because of the fact that information could be delivered very quickly. It could be delivered en masse, okay? And a funny thing about information is that it is completely subjective. What you walk away with information, we're going to talk about that later, but what you walk away with information is completely personalized. That is your information. It takes genesis and its birth in the mind of the person who receives the data. Okay. A sociologist in 1985 reported that under California no-fault divorce system, women suffered a 73% drop in their standard of living in the first year after getting a divorce, while men's standard of living improved 42%. The statistics were widely quoted and influenced a trend towards reinstituting fault-based divorces. Sociologists subsequently admitted that her numbers were wrong. The gap grossly inflated. Okay, so this is statistical information. This is another type of bad information. Okay, so all these things can happen to us. Now, our context here is around how Rocket Your Biz is going to try to help brokers and agents transform how they do business so that they're transferring knowledge to the consumer, not data and not information. We want knowledge transfer, not data, not information. So we're going to look at why we think that's the case. So in the modern age of what I refer to as information plus plus, in terms of real estate, we are very, very grateful for the work that Reso does because it enables us in a lot of ways. As an independent software vendor, in order for us to have great attraction, we have to be able to get into a disposition when we're writing software, the software that we write, that we can do that at an economical factor that's affordable for us. If we have to go to each MLS and do something differently, that's very cost prohibitive. We can't do that. Okay, so having standards is a great thing for us. So we're happy about the work that's being done with Data Dictionary, a huge piece of work, by the way. For those of you who haven't looked at that, when you look at the file that contains the wiki, it is a gigantic file that has taken them years and years to assemble. It's a gigantic piece of work, very, very valuable. We do we go out of our way to try to leverage that as much as we can. The other part about it, that it is a great foundation, for the creation of other technologies that leverage not only things that happen inside of a particular MLS, but the entire industry as a whole. Okay. The value of a singular shared terms of vocabulary is great. This way, as developers, we don't have to try to figure out what every field's name is or what that field means. That's already been taken for us, and we have consensus from the entire organization. So they've saved us a lot of work and try to figure that out. If you guys are writing user interfaces and you're trying to put stuff on the screen, you're trying to figure out what the name of that field is, we don't have to figure that. We don't have to work on that. That's done for us already. Not only did we not semantically know what it means, but we understand it's thesaurus meaning as well. So we have an active understanding of what that thing can be called. We also have an understanding of what it does relative to the whole system. Okay? We've got now OData with the web API. We have metadata there that is significantly important, that allows us to kind of make inquiries about the system before we get started, so that as we go from MLS to MLS, we have the capacity there to figure things out, to make some metadata inquiries, so you get some data that describes some other data, so that we can interact with those systems at a lower cost. So this is a great benefit to us. Lastly, we have the data dictionary and something called the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom model. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So one of the other value propositions with the Reso standard is reuse. So reuse is huge. How do we get that? Again, in terms of a vendor, we're implementing, trying to be a national supplier, and not only as a supplier in our own regional area, but we want to go and be a national presence and have national presence as well. So the Reso standards is great because it acts as our anti-pattern to fundamentally bad data information types. It allows us to just skip right past that stuff because we have consensus in terms of how we name things, how we use things, how things are called, so forth and so on. And we get actually the foundations of an organization pattern that allows us to start architecting information that's useful not only to the agent and to the brokerages, but to their clients as well. Okay? So moving past Reso, now that Reso has given us all these great foundational things, what's the next thing for us to do? With Reso, what we get is they're doing the data gathering for us already. We're getting raw input, sensory-oriented data that's uninterpreted, okay? The beautiful thing about that process is we've got the people who work on the transfers group, and they are being solicited for information from other brokerages, and that's being accumulated and collected. This is huge, folks, because what that does is saves people like us a lot of time and money and energy having to go off and get that done. That means that we can deliver our product to you quicker and cheaper, but the quality is very high. Okay, so this is a huge advantage for us. Second thing is how we declare and define information. Information, we've used that term a lot today. We're going to start fine-tuning information. We're going to start dialing into that and figure out what this really means because we've been using it pretty loosely. We're going to get that dialed in. In that particular area, what we like to do here is to talk about things like how we analyze it, how we organize it. We talk about considerations for organizational needs becoming a bigger component of concern in terms of how you get repeat value if you are a brokerage and if you are an agent. If I'm in business, if I'm in business to do this, how do I get residual multi-value on my business if I'm not managing that very well? Because that will eat my lunch if I don't manage it very well. Okay? So execute information management, we'll talk about that soon. Then the following thing, we'll get back to the thing Deborah said is, we're now entering the age of what's called the knowledge economy and the knowledge worker. That's a big deal, guys. That's a very big deal because things have changed, paradigm shifts so huge from the way that the information model worked in the information economy to the knowledge economy. People behave differently. They don't behave the same way. They behave dramatically different now. And so we've got to change how we model our applications, how we model our systems, how we model our businesses, how we execute so that we're all being profitable, we're delivering services that are usable and of service and of value. Now, I talked really quickly about this thing called DIKW. Data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. How many people in here have background in information science? Okay, then you know what this is. This is an old model, been around for a very long time. It is basically how we articulate and how we manage, how we conceptualize complex things in terms of information. A lot of you, who in here has been to a library? Okay, then you are a consumer of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. How many know what the Dewey Decimal System is? You've used it. Okay? So this is a great paradigm because the way that we, from how we're educated, to how we build systems, how we interact with systems, how we manage systems, is all predicated on this thing called data, information, and knowledge. Okay, the sweet spot is wisdom. Okay, and we have two ways that we think about getting that done today. One of them is called, let's say, wisdom, the things that we experience and we can do for other people, and then a new paradigm called predictive analytics, machine learning. Right? That's another thing, another way that we're talking about how we can look to the future, focus on the future, make predictions about what's going to happen. In this particular case here, what we're looking at is what I've got on the bottom of the slide is a little snippet of the OData XML format. If you can look at it just very quickly, you can see that there's a lot of data stored here. A lot of data stored here. In the particular area here, let's say we're looking at property. Right now, currently, I took a snapshot before we left, there are 499 entity types under property. And all of those have sub-properties or associated things close to them, underneath them. So this is a very large model that we're getting to. My guess is going to get bigger and bigger. But this is a great place for us to start with things we want to do. We also have the data dictionary. The data dictionary is critically important because of what I said earlier, that the language, the terminological units that are stored in this particular production are useful to us because it helps all of us as ISVs to communicate with you guys in a consistent, orthogonal, regular manner. We don't have to guess about how you name things. Oh, but Tommy, what we want to do is we call things differently in our area. It's probably a synonym. Same as. Okay? And so that's okay. What we like to do is if we stay close to this, the error ratio is pretty small. If you do have something that you want to have change, then we have technology that allows us to adapt that, but in an associative way that doesn't get us far from this. This is important. Okay. So Rocket Your Biz, we're focused, and our focus is on the brokerage and on the real estate agent. Okay? That is our focus here. We want to help, Ron, the real estate agent, and Rita, the real estate agent. We want to help the broker. And what we like to do is start moving them into this other area where we can start managing information and start managing knowledge, okay, so that it becomes a valuable IP articulated asset. That's what we want to do. Okay? So right now, if you look at the scale, we're kind of leaning to the left-hand side. We're kind of heavy on information, right? What we want to do is start balancing that out on the knowledge management side. And so there's some things that we have to do. Firstly, we have to start behaving differently and start thinking differently about our businesses and how what we're doing is occurring to other people, particularly our associations, our associates, and the clients that we serve. This is a very important component. I've introduced a new term here, okay? And most people see it and they go like, oh my God, are you guys on the metaphysical stuff? Or who are you, right? So ontology. In this particular case here, the representation is knowledge representation. We're not talking about metaphysics. Not that there's not one God or not one thing, that's not the case here. So we're here with strictly into the software side, ontology from an educational background on the sciences side, in terms of machines and software. We are kind of split between cognitive science, AI, and maybe some other stuff over in linguistics, okay? All right, here we go. And let's park here for a little bit and kind of figure out what's going on here. We talked about the data dictionary. We talked about the OData metadata payload that's being delivered to us. We want to look at where that fits in with this thing called the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom model. Okay. There are two planes. There's a contextual plane and a plane for understanding. Okay. These two parallel planes, or these two planes represent, in this axis, things that are happening in parallel in a fairly dynamic manner. Okay. So on one side of the fence, we have things like data gathering and research. Okay. One of the valuable things that happens at Reso is data gathering and research. That's crucial for us, right? And so that's a very big thing for us to do. We're excited about that because it gives us such a great foundation to extend and to grow from. It's a great place to start. Second, we have information, okay? Information, we're talking about that. So in that case here, it's data relative to context that we begin to organize. Data we begin to organize. Well, this sheds a different light on data now, right? Data is at the lesser point of the graph. That's not where the money is. The money is as we start to go further up the graph. We start having a bigger payday, a bigger value proposition, okay? Information is critical because what this happens, based on our context, this forces us to start organizing things differently, right? We're organizing things differently. For example, I'm looking for a fixer-upper. When I look at the MLS data and I'm looking for a fixer-upper, I organize that information relative to the context of I'm looking for a fixer-upper. If I'm looking for a different kind of house, I organize the shape of the data changes again because the context has changed. So our information model makes a change. I'm going to introduce another term, information architecture. Information architecture. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. Now, let's get to knowledge and look at what's happening here. And knowledge is about the formulation of information parts, and I need to do something, right? The formulation of information parts, and I want to do something with it. That's a big difference between gathering data, making information, and now I want to do something with it. There's a big difference here, okay? Which way is the arrow going? Experience is running seemingly backwards in time. You walk into a room. You don't recognize your senses, your sight is working, your ears are working, but you don't recognize anything in that room. Why? Because I have no knowledge about anything I've ever seen in this room before. There's no context there, right? I can recognize them as individual things, but that's just a thing that's just there. I don't really understand what this whole thing is all about. That's because I don't have any knowledge about that. I've never experienced it before. Therefore, I cannot understand its organization, and therefore, I cannot understand its data. Okay. Now, once we get to knowledge, now what we're doing is now we're organizing knowledge to go forward. So how many of us have children? We love our children, boys and girls. Don't touch the stove, that's a hot fire. You'll get burned. That's wisdom. A lot of us know that because we tried it out. That hurts, ouchie. My little boy, he's 2.5 years old. Little ball is rolling across the floor. He chases the ball, and I see him, and he runs under the table, and whew, nothing happened. He got the ball, came back out. 3 months later, the ball goes to the table. He runs to the table, bam. I've been telling him, don't do that. That's dangerous. You're going to hurt yourself. Not until he experienced that for himself did he understand what I was talking about. I gave him the data. I shaped the information. It didn't make any sense yet. He didn't have an experience. Now that he understood, now it all made sense. That's why Daddy was telling me not to do that. I won't do that anymore. Okay. So this is how this whole interplay works. When these guys wrote this book on the ontology of information and the consequences, this is what they were writing about. The information age was about how we assembled information and how we delivered it, and how different things in delivery might change. Now we move to the information, moving away from the information plus age. We understand the DIKW model, and now we need to figure out what does it look like to do business in this world. So our focus is on the illicit agent, a highly valued knowledge worker, and then this is the point to where we needed to start reimagining MLS data, because these were knowledge workers. We'll define it what that is. And they had to communicate and share and interact with other people. Okay? This is a slippery slope. As a real estate agent, you've got Zillow. My sister calls me. We're trying to get my mom and dad into a new place. Can you help me, Tommy? Can you help me? We're trying to get mom and dad into a new place. I said, well, what do you need help with? Well, we went to Zillow, we went to Redfin, and I don't understand anything I'm looking at. What do you mean? I don't understand. It's too much information, too much data. I don't understand. I don't know where to start. We need to get a real estate agent. Okay. My sister is a certified public accountant who manages a multi-billion-dollar organization. She goes to a website that I think is pretty simple to use, and she can't figure it out. It doesn't mean that she doesn't understand the data. It doesn't mean she doesn't understand. It means she has no prior knowledge with any of that stuff, so she cannot, the context does not fit, and so forth. She can't do anything what's being presented to her. Nonetheless, another person goes to the same site, and they figure, this is great. This is nirvana. This is awesome. I have everything I need. I can do this myself. I'm ready to go. Okay? So what happens to the real estate agent when MLS data is publicly available? Something happens. There's pressure. There's pressure there. Have business practice and organization changed in order to compensate for this new management of information, this new way of organizing, of sequencing and presenting information to you? How are our businesses beginning to, how do we understand that? How do we adapt and change to that? Has our tooling around that experience changed, right? We heard a beautiful presentation, My Planet, fantastic technology. That's exactly in the direction that we have to go if we're going to be competitive, because the increasing world of IoT devices, whether it be an appliance in your home or your phone, which can track you if you're in the mountains, or track you if you're moving, or track you if you're jumping, or your Fitbit device, whatever it is, we are getting tons of data, sensory data. There's no context about it unless there's an application for it. Okay. So as soon as we understand that, then we can better position ourselves as tool makers, as ISVs for brokers and agents, and we can begin to deliver greater value for the people that we serve. The knowledge age is a new and advanced form of capitalism, in which knowledge and ideas are the main source of economic growth, more important than land, money, labor, or any tangible resource. Boy, that's a big deal. New patterns of work and new business practices have developed, and as a result, new kinds of workers and new different skills are acquired. My best friend, his name is David, has a little girl, Lauren. She's 11 now. I first met her when she was maybe, 7. She plays Minecraft. What she does with Minecraft scares me. It literally frightens me, because to me, she seems like a super person, a mutant individual, the things she can do with Minecraft. Because I understand she's processing data. She's shaping it for herself. And then she's building something. And then she goes onto YouTube. She researches some other new information and knowledge. And with that knowledge, she comes back to Minecraft and she builds a new thing. So that's a huge deal. When I was playing, nothing like that happened. I was reading encyclopedias and dictionaries. A couple of different dispensations of how knowledge has evolved, or how our behavior in our economies have changed, right? Pre-industrial times, the focus was knowledge, know-how knowledge. Industrial age was know what knowledge. The difference is that educationally, we were trying to figure out how to deliver information to, how to package it and deliver it. Next we had, okay, now we have knowledge, how do we package it and deliver it so that we can do other things, right? Post-industrial not only was not what, but we needed more of that combined with know-how, okay? So in our knowledge worker dispensation, now with knowledge, if you're a broker, you have to locate the data, you have to access it, you have to format it, you have to put it together, you have to change its shape. You have to do all these things. In addition to that, you're already a multidisciplinary worker. You take care of divorces, you take care of death, you take care of new buyers, you take care of all these things. All the pressure is on you to deliver the right information, the right shape of information that's value to your client, and to give them something of value so they can go off and think, I'm going to keep this person alive because they helped me. They gave me something that's useful. In the world that we have today, we'll build applications. We have two models. We have something called closed world assumptions and open world assumptions. In our existing models, we have closed world something means if it's in the database, I can get it out of there, it must exist. If it's not in the database, then it doesn't exist. Go to your MLS listing and say, I'm looking for a luxury home. Can you find a luxury home just by querying it that way? Doesn't mean the attributes aren't there. It just means articulation of data is not there, so you can find that, right? So the data models that we use determine how we actually build an application for that kind of stuff. One of the reasons why we have moved and gone to ontologies is because we're not confined by that. We can actually go beyond that. So we actually, with an ontology, build something called the semantic enhancement. We semantically enhance our data. I'm going to go through this kind of forward through some of the stuff we can get to because we're running out of time here. So what we do is we actually go through and semantically enhance the data so that we can extend the value of what we're already getting from Reso, which is fantastic. It's great. Okay. I'm getting the hurry up and go sign, so I'm going to jump through some things here. In getting our heads around it, we figured out that it wasn't about the data. So don't be a data pusher. We kind of played with this kind of thing. It's just not about information exchange. We wanted to focus on knowledge transfer. Okay. Ontology power. Ontology is about the representation of knowledge. There are a lot of things we try to do to represent that. It is not about data storing or not vast amounts of data. Okay, we're really about a different kind of a thing. In putting together a solution that we've been working on, our architecture is built on top of an ontology system, on top of the semantic web. And so we talk about things like OWL representations or ontology web languages and RDF databases and SKOS, things of that sort. One of the things that we do as we process this information is that we leverage things like the data dictionary, and we formalize that with a reasoning capacity to something called an SKOS vocabulary, which can actually make inquiries against, reason against. It's not just a declarative structure. It's a wiki on steroids, okay? We've also have a platform for semantic reasoning, okay? So this is the piece of software that leverages something that's called automated reasoning, and these pieces of software run all the time. And what they're doing is they're going out there and they're looking at information that is relative conceptually to things that we want to talk about, or how we want to uplift the data in our data dictionary, in our Reso databases, and how we can extend that so that we can do bigger and more powerful things. Okay? So one of the things that we have done is we put together an architecture that allows us to go through there and semantically enhance that data. We do that by doing things like the following. We'll take information. Let's say that we take the property faces data. We take the property faces data and we set on top of that a system of cardinal directionality, right? We combine that with another system that does feng shui, another system that does solar panels, another system that does legal property, right? So the foundations of that data is already in the MLS database. We semantically enhance it by putting these other databases on top of it, and we create a workflow interaction so that the agent has more capacity to create more customized information architecture and deliver that to their clients. Okay. So that's just a kind of formalization of what we're talking about there. So, rocket your business or startup. We're in an alpha stage right now. Our products will become available in alpha probably the first quarter of next year. One of the things that you can look forward to is things like we're really about how we can partner with other people like My Planet, because they're doing fantastic things, and so we'd like to integrate with people like that. But the way that we do this is we do this through ontologies. So ontologies are not domain specific, they are domain agnostic. They have to do with the real world and how we model that. And so this allows us to adapt those models very easily. They're not a relational model, they're a dynamic model. We can update and change them at little cost. Okay? But this is the kind of things that we're coming up probably in relative to this conversation in our first quarter time frame. We're excited about the kind of things that we've been able to develop and work. We work with agents a lot. Deborah herself is an active agent, so I get a lot of input from her. But we're quite excited about the future. And the future for what we think is for brokerages and for real estate agents is that we've got to help them to do a better job of moving into this position where they can manage information and manage knowledge so that there's a multiplier in terms of value over a longer period of time. Okay? That's it I have today. Thank you very much for your time.